Siddhartha Gautama was a historical figure, born a prince in the Himalayas around 563 BCE. We trace his origins through artifacts like this pillar, erected by Emperor Ashoka in modern-day Nepal. It features an inscription in Brahmi, an ancient script serving as the ancestor to modern Indian writing systems, which identifies this site as his birthplace. Sages at the royal court predicted two possible futures for the infant prince. He would either grow into a monarch who would unite the world through conquest, or a great sage who would abandon society to find spiritual truth. Desperate for his son to become a king, Suddhodana constructed a life of total insulation. He kept the prince within the palace grounds, surrounding him with constant entertainment, while strictly prohibiting any mention of sickness, old age, or death. This attempt to engineer a perfect life backfired. The more the prince was shielded, the more he became preoccupied with the world beyond the palace walls, eventually finding that his luxury left him personally unfulfilled. By age 29, Siddhartha had achieved everything expected of a prince. He was a master of martial arts and had married and fathered a son, yet he remained deeply unsettled by the shallow nature of his existence. He eventually ventured outside and encountered the four sights that would redefine his life: a man bent with age, a person ravaged by disease, a decaying corpse, and finally a serene, wandering ascetic. These encounters shattered his sense of security. He realized that physical decay and death were the inevitable fate of every living being, and that his royal status offered no protection against these universal realities. In what is known as the Great Departure, Siddhartha left his family in the dead of night. He rode to the forest, cut his hair with his sword, and traded his real silks for the rough, ochre-colored robes of a beggar. Siddhartha viewed suffering as a universal disease, and his renunciation was a mission to find a clinical cure for the pain inherent in human life. For 6 years, he studied with the leading meditation masters of the Ganges Basin. He learned to enter states of deep mental void, but he found that these were only temporary escapes rather than a permanent solution to suffering. He then turned to extreme asceticism, attempting to conquer his mind by starving his body. He ate as little as a single grain of rice a day, becoming so emaciated that his bones were visible through his skin. Siddhartha eventually realized that starving the body only clouded the mind. He proposed a middle way, a path of moderation that avoided both the indulgence of his youth and the extreme deprivation of his wandering years. By seeking balance over extremes, he established a new philosophical framework for investigating the nature of the mind. He accepted a bowl of rice and milk from a village girl, regaining the physical strength he needed for deep contemplation. At Bodhi Gaya, he sat beneath a fig tree and vowed not to rise until he understood the root of suffering. This temple now stands at that site, commemorating the long night of meditation that followed. He practiced mindfulness, a technique of observing his thoughts and sensations without judgment. He watched his inner fears and desires arise and pass, refusing to be moved by them. At dawn, his mind achieved nirvana, a state where the fires of craving and ignorance are extinguished. He had finally broken his tie to samsara, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. This realization earned him the title Buddha, or the Awakened One, signifying that he had finally seen through the illusions that keep the mind in a state of constant dissatisfaction. The Buddha traveled to Sarnath to share his discovery. This massive stupa marks the location where he gave his first sermon, outlining the mechanics of his philosophy to his first group of followers. He framed his teaching as the Four Noble Truths. He diagnosed that life contains an inherent unsatisfactoriness caused by mental attachments, and it's possible to end this cycle by following the Noble Eightfold Path. This focuses on mental discipline and the idea that karma is defined by the intentions behind our deeds. His teachings survived for centuries through oral tradition, before being recorded on materials like these Gandharan birch bark scrolls, which are the oldest surviving Buddhist manuscripts in existence. He dismantled the spiritual hierarchy of his era by opening his community to everyone. He taught that spiritual liberation was a universal potential, accessible to all regardless of their gender or the caste they were born into. For 45 years, the Buddha walked across northern India, presenting his ideas as a physician's diagnosis of the human mind, rather than a divine revelation. This is illustrated in the story of Kisa Gotami, a mother who came to him in a state of shock, carrying her dead child and begging for a cure. The Buddha told her he would heal the child if she could bring him a mustard seed from a house that had never known death. Kisa Gotami visited every home, finding mustard seeds plentiful, but every family had lost someone. She realized her grief was part of a shared human experience, not an isolated tragedy. At age 80, the Buddha fell mortally ill in Kushinagar. He prepared for his parinirvana, the final release from existence that occurs upon the death of an enlightened being. He refused to name a successor, telling his followers his teachings should be their only guide. His final words were a command to be self-reliant. All compounded things decay. Work out your own salvation with diligence.